Brought to you by the Astro Youth House chapter from STEM Arts Lab, Space on Earth is a student-led podcast that inspires listeners who are curious about space to explore the wonders of the universe through the voices of young thinkers, creators, and dreamers.
Each episode blends personal curiosity with scientific discovery, from the mysterious depths of black holes to the practical impacts of space on Earth, like GPS, climate science, and medicine.
Hosted by STEM art students from Taos, New Mexico, this podcast draws connections between space, art, and science, how these things all impact us here on Earth, and their meaning to humanity.
You'll hear raw, insightful conversations about topics like light pollution, the overview effect, lunar exploration, and the societal impact of the space race.
Whether you're into exoplanets, dark energy, or just stargazing from your backyard, Space on Earth makes space personal, accessible, and inspiring. We believe that space isn't just for astronauts and scientists, it's for everyone.
Join us on this adventure as we explore the cosmos from Earth, one story at a time.
Special thanks to the Lore Foundation for helping launch this podcast. Hi, my name is Taylor. And my name is Shaylee.
Today we're going to be discussing the overview effect. And we're going to talk to you guys about what exactly that means. What are the effects emotionally and psychologically behind that? How do you experience that without actually going to space yourself? And why that's important to us and the future of space. Shaylee, would you want to go into what exactly the overview effect is?
All right, so the overview effect. The overview effect was a term coined by Frank White, who actually wrote the whole book on what the overview effect is. And so in his book, it is said that the overview effect is the predicted experience of astronauts and space settlers who would have a different philosophical point of view as a result of having a different physical perspective. And so just putting that in more simpler words, it's just a sort of psychological shift that occurs when someone views Earth from space.
What I like about that excerpt is really talking about the shift in perspective and how that changes your psychology. And I think that everybody experiences that in their day-to-day lives, not on the scale or to the extent that astronauts do in experiencing the overview effect. But everybody's had moments in their life where something happens or you view things from a different angle or perspective, or something changes and you learn more about the world around you and you feel different. And that's really what the overview effect is it's that experience that is so out of the usual and so different than what you're used to that it gives you almost an epiphany-like moment where you can have this other perspective. And for a lot of astronauts, from what I've heard about people discussing the effect, is saying that after seeing the Earth and you return back home, you feel this absurd oneness with the other people on the planet and with the planet itself.
Yeah, definitely. Going off of what you were saying, just hearing experiences from other people, all these people that have been to space and have seen that bright blue line across the Earth's horizon, they have like a sense of connection and vulnerability. They see Earth not only as this thing that they're living on, but as a thing they need to protect. And so when they come back, they have more sense of oneness, but also a sense of connection with everyone around them.
And, I think what needs to be understood about the overview effect when you're discussing it from, how does this matter? How does this impact our lives? Is that the term itself is mostly referring to that experience in space, but we can have experiences about space here. Like for me, a lot of times when I'm looking at the sky, I kind of get that sense of there are other people who can look up and see the same sky as me. And that makes me feel connected. Recently, where I live, I had the incredible chance to see the Northern Lights and getting to talk to my friends who were also looking at them, friends in different cities who were also looking at them. I felt so connected to everybody else who was watching the aurora in the sky. Because even though we're far apart and we live in different places and live different lives, one thing that we're all tied together by is the space and the planet in which we live on.
Exactly. The Earth is something that all of us share. And then, especially the sky and space itself. We all share the same sky. We all share the same space. And so just being able to look up at the sky and know that that is the same sky that someone else is viewing just gives you that sense of closeness. And even though it doesn't give you the same sense of epiphany or connection that you would get if you were to view Earth from space, you still feel that somewhat closeness with others if you continue to think about it from a more philosophical point of view.
And definitely with the philosophical, psychological point of view, personally, I'm really interested in psychology. That's a topic that I love. I love to talk about. And you really see it work itself into the overview effect of having an experience like that that is so outside of what our brain normally intakes that it forces your brain into thinking in a different way. And people who have come back to Earth after seeing Earth from space have been described as having this more compassionate and caring and kind air to them. And to me, that's really interesting. It makes me think about how can we, as everyday citizens who don't have the opportunity to go into space, have that connection, have that experience and mindset with our planet that leads us to feel that way and think that way about the other people who live here. And we have to think about this at a time where our planet is as divided as it is, where we are having conflicts in different countries and different areas of the world, in our own country. And what really connects all life on Earth is the fact that we have this planet and that we have space. And that is the realization and the mindset that a lot of people who experience the overview effect experience for themselves. And I think understanding that and having that be a more widespread mindset and more talked about is really going to be beneficial to the way that we interact with other people on the planet.
It will definitely be beneficial, even just to get a glimpse or a sliver of a feeling that the overview effect gives. Just being able to be more compassionate to others and just knowing that everyone else here is sharing the same earth and is on the same planet as you. And yeah, just like you said, it gives people a more sense of vulnerability and it gives them more compassion. And in a world where we have so much conflict, this is exactly what some of the people need. And, they are definitely not a lot of people that are actually able to access space in the way that we'd like. But there are some other ways that they could do. There are some other ways that they could possibly try and obtain the same effect. Some things, like even just going on a plane flight and just being able to see the earth from a much higher perspective than they would normally. Even something simple as that, that could give them a slight sliver of what the overview effect gives astronauts.
Yeah, totally. I get that feeling when I'm on a plane and, you're flying out of some huge city and you look down and you just see the patterns in neighborhoods and the layout and all like tiny cars driving by. And it gives me a sense of, how routine life is and how, every small thing that we don't notice, if you look at it from a different perspective, you notice those patterns, you notice those layouts. For me, possibly one of my favorite ways to experience a similar oneness to what people describe when experiencing the overview effect is, I have a lot of friends that live in different cities, live in different places that I don't get to see in person very often. But what we can do is we can both go sit outside and say, like, can you see this constellation right now? Can you see Venus? And knowing that we're looking at the same part of sky and can see the same thing, this just makes me feel closer to people that I can't be close with. And it also, even on a larger scale than that, looking up and thinking, this is the sky that so many people are seeing. This is the sky that people have been seeing for hundreds and hundreds of years before me. It's not just an in the moment thing. I mean, most of the constellations that we have now, their origins, their stories are from civilizations ago. in different eras, and that translates through today, and you can still see those constellations that people could see walking the earth before you. And to me, that gives me a sense of connection with not only the earth and the people on the earth now, but everything in the earth and our universe as a whole.
Yeah, definitely. Going off of the stories, knowing that all those stories were made so long ago, and yet we are able to still go to them today and go up to the constellations, look at the constellations up in the sky, and be like, the story behind this constellation is this and that. And knowing that those stories were made so long ago gives one a sense of timelessness, but also a sense of how small we are in this vast majority of world, in space, and just in the galaxy. Because there's so much out there that we don't know. But knowing that we on Earth are able to see the same stars, same constellations, and have those same stories that revolve around those constellations and stars, and just being able to see all of that and know that we're able to experience the same thing that people so long ago were able to experience. It gives you that sense of connectivity with those that are around you and those that are far from you.
Yeah, I totally feel that. And what you said about feeling so small compared to the universe. For me, I've always had an interesting experience with that. And I see a lot of people talking about, when I think about how vast the universe is, I feel smaller myself. I don't really experience that in the sense of, traditionally feeling like a grain of sand in a beach, that sense of being so small compared to everything else. Because for me, every time I have an experience where I think about, you know, how large the universe is, how connected everything is, that oneness, that makes me feel so connected to everything in the universe that's happening everywhere that's come before me. And I'm sure many of you have heard the expression, like, we are made of stardust. And that's true. A lot of things in the universe come down to the same molecules and materials. And so everything is connected. And I think that that's such a cool thing to think about. It makes me feel larger than myself. It makes me feel like I'm a part of something larger than myself. This, Shaylee, do you see what I'm getting at here?
I do, sort of. My mind's getting there. But like you said, Taylor, it's just a sense of oneness around all of this, especially with the stardust, with everyone coming from the same place. And while we may recognize all of our differences, we all originally come from the same origins. And Earth is our origin place. And if you go up with the overview effect, just seeing the blue line in the sky, it gives you that sense of closeness with everyone and everything else on Earth.
Yeah, and I feel like it's so ingrained into the way that we think as a society and people think in general, is we are so separated. And, you know, sometimes I've had times where I've thought about it and I think to myself, kind of the concept of countries in itself is bizarre to me at times. Because we think about, we're all people on this planet. We all exist as one, species and being on this planet. And we divide ourselves so much to an extent that it can become harmful to people. And, that's what the overview effect is about to me, is taking away that division. Because, for astronauts looking down at the Earth in space, you don't see country lines, you don't see politics, you don't see groups of people, you see a planet of people living together and interacting with their environment and living and just, you don't see all that divides us, you just see what brings us together.
Yeah, definitely. Because from the viewpoint of space, looking down at Earth, you don't see those individual borderlines or anything that separates the people. You just see Earth. You see the ocean and you see the land. There isn't anything that's separating the two. And just being able to look from up there and look down and seeing no borders, no separations, nothing of that. It gives you a sense of like, why do we have all of these constructs in place? Because they're pretty. I'm pretty sure there are reasons as to why we have those constructs. But when you're up in space looking down, you don't think about those types of constructs anymore. You see Earth as as one whole thing rather than a bunch of separate countries, counties, states, all that. You just see one whole Earth.
And that's really what makes the overview effect so important. And in the in the context of actually going out into space. And what we're seeing now, which is so exciting, is we are seeing opportunities for people who haven't spent their whole life training to be an astronaut go into space. There's a program that's put together called Virgin Galactic, which is a concept of commercial space flights where you go in for a week, you train, you learn everything you need to learn, and you do a small, short suborbital flight. A suborbital flight is just going to space, being up there for a minute, and going back down. You don't orbit the Earth, you don't go much further than the atmosphere. You just go out of the atmosphere and you come back down. And Shaylee and I actually had the opportunity to go to Spaceport America, where a lot of the Virgin Galactic project stuff is based, and meet an astronaut who had been into space, named Camila Gilbert. And hearing her talk about the overview effect and her own experience was incredible. And, it really gets you back to the idea of how can space be accessible for people who haven't spent their whole lives on it. And she was telling us that in her life, she never thought that she was going to go into space. She still is an artist who worked with NASA and was given the opportunity to go up as part of testing out the procedure and the project. And so hearing stories, especially in person, of people describing the overview effect is incredible. It's an unspeakable experience, especially hearing it from an artist. Just the way that it's described is so intriguing, and it really makes you feel like you're there.
Yeah, definitely. I love talking with Hamila. She, like you said, she is an artist and she was able to actually go up into space through one of the Virgin Galactic test runs. And just being able to hear her talk about the overview effect itself, her words are very descriptive, but also very accurate. And there is one thing that I remember that constantly sticks with me. It's that once she goes up and she's able to see the earth itself, there's nothing but silence. And it just gives her more of that sense of epiphany and that sense that she is one of the many on earth. And it just gives her that more philosophical sense of like, hey, I'm here up in the sky. And then she's able to look down at everything and see all of the land, all the ocean, everything.
Yeah. Yeah, because, the silence and you're seeing the earth and gravity is different. It's so outside of day-to-day experience that it forces your brain into thinking differently. And that's why it's so shocking for so many people, is because, you can't experience that normally to the extent like that you could on Earth from what we're talking about, mini overview effects. Um, like looking up at space or going on a plane and looking down. Actually having the chance to go into space completely shifts that perspective. And at the moment, commercial space flights are very, very expensive. So they're pretty exclusive. It is something that they're working on having it be more accessible. I know that on one of the first flights they had a mother and daughter from somewhere in South America. I can't quite remember the exact country. Apply for a competition and then for a raffle and get the opportunity to go into space. And this is a mother and daughter who didn't grow up in an environment that set them up to go into space, didn't, have that excess amount of money. And that's what's so exciting to see is that we are getting to the point where we have the technology and we are getting the technology and getting more advanced day by day to make the overview effect, make space travel an accessible experience so that people who aren't born into that place where they're set up to go there can have that experience. And that's what's really exciting to me personally.
Yeah, definitely. Because I know me personally, with the way things are right now, I wouldn't be able to put down all that money and go up to space myself. So I'm really looking forward to the day when space becomes so accessible that anyone can go up to space if they want to, that they can go up, experience that for themselves, and see what all these other people are feeling. Because right now, even though it is more accessible than it has been in the past, it's still something that a lot of people aren't able to access, even if it's due to financial reasons or anything else. But we're getting there, and eventually, maybe in a couple years or in maybe a couple decades or even further on, hopefully we will be able to access space and have space accessible to everyone, regardless of where they come from, what country they're in, what their financial status is, anything of the sort. I'm look forward to the day that space becomes truly accessible to all.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where we really think about the future of space and of the overview effect and of space travel. It's definitely something that we are getting closer to. And we see technology has such an exponential growth rate because the better technology we have, the faster and easier it is to make better technology. So every single day, we get steps closer to having that experience and opportunity available for people. And that's what's so exciting. And it's also really, you know, you want to take every experience that you have in your life. If you're interested in something, the best thing you can do is really lean into that interest and really push yourself. When we saw Mila Gilbert talk after she went to space, one thing that she said that really stuck with me was make choices based on your curiosity and not your fears. And that quote stands out to me, and I think about that so often because that's so true. And that's something, that's the reason that we have been able as a species to go into space because it is difficult and it is scary, and there's a lot of technicalities behind it. But there's a human wonder and fascination with going to space, and it is really leaning into that curiosity and into those passions that when people do that, incredible things happen. And so for anybody listening, that's the number one piece of advice that I will give anybody ever is if you're curious about something, if you're interested in something, go for it and learn as much as you can, take as many opportunities as you can because you never know what will happen.
Yeah, definitely. Go live your life. Go do what you want to do. Don't follow what other people are going for. If that is something that truly interests you, go for it. Because as many people as there are, as long as you have that passion that drives you, you're going to be one step ahead. You have that drive, that passion that's going to take you the extra step forward. But yeah, going back to the overview effect though, other than commercial space flights, Taylor, what do you think is another way that you could get that same effect?
Even just like on such a small level, looking at photos of space, I love doing that. Or really, I don't know, take some time to think to yourself, like go outside, look around, and think, these trees, these trees, this land, we all have this in common. Every person on Earth, we all live on the same planet and we all have that. And that's that sense of oneness. And the overview effect seems so unachievable because it's, specifically talking about being in space. Why that's the definition and why that's where the overview effect comes from is because it's such a dramatic shift. We can experience that oneness and those little moments and realizations in our day-to-day lives. It's just not going to be as extreme as it is for somebody going into space. But that doesn't mean that doesn't exist. And so for anybody listening to this and thinking, I wish I could experience that, you can. You know, look into the sky at night and think about all the people who have seen those stars before you. Or, go on a walk through nature or wherever you're living and just think about the other people who are living and the other, forms of life that are on this planet. And we all share this together. And that really brings me to how I want to close this episode is talking about how can we use knowledge of the overview effect to be more beneficial to not only space, but just to day-to-day life on Earth. Shaylee, what are your thoughts on that?
As we talked about earlier, when people get that overview effect, they're more compassionate, they're more caring, and they have a higher sense of vulnerability about their Earth. And if we could get everyone on the same page about how that feeling is, about how fragile Earth is, and get them to have a better sense of self, as well a better sense of community and connection with everyone else, then I think the amount of work and progress that we can make as a society as a whole will be so much greater. Because then everyone, they wouldn't see all the differences. Well, if everyone is able to get on the same page, then they have that sense of connection with another. And even if they don't have that same sense of connection as they would get from the overview effect, even if they have just that small, slight sliver of what it is, then they can understand, like, hey, if we work together, we can accomplish this. If we work together, we can accomplish this other thing. It gives everyone a better sense of understanding on what we can accomplish together as a whole, rather than if we are defined by all of our differences.
Absolutely. You totally hit the nail on the head there. We think about what can we achieve when we come together and we embrace that oneness. For example, Shaylee and I by no means are science experts or astronauts who get to go up into space, but we have that passion about space. And when you come together with other people who share similar passions, especially about space, all the things that you can do and create and experience because of that are incredible. So, really, my number one takeaway for those of you who are listening to this episode is take some time to just think about, what connects us as a planet. How do you, as an individual, feel connected to the larger population of the planet? Whether that's just looking up at the sky or, having a shared experience with somebody. There are little things that we notice every single day that tie us all together. And that's really what the overview effect is on an everyday life, like on a scale of everyday life. Is it's that feeling of being connected to the other people on the planet and to the planet itself. And I think that once we understand that and we understand the significance of that feeling, the benefits that we will see societally, culturally, and just, talking to other people is going to be incredible. Also, having that understanding of the overview effect, how it makes you feel, the benefits of it, really is going to help push us to explore space more and make it easier to send people into space to experience this for themselves. Because that's also something that's going to be really helpful to us in the future is if we have that drive to be pushing the limits more, sending people to space. And I just think it's so exciting.
I believe truly that if everyone was able to experience the overview effect, I truly believe that the repercussions of that would be truly beneficial to us, not only as individuals, but as a society as a whole.
Absolutely. So, just closing notes. Thank you, everybody who is listening today. Thank you so much for listening. Your support is so incredible. It means so much to us. So, we're here to help you guys and get you guys information about space. So, always reach out to us. Thank you so much for listening and supporting. I'm Taylor,
And I'm Shaylee.
and thank you so much.